It's really important to take a moment now to look at the season that has just gone by. You'll learn a lot from it. Now, for example, I grow a heap of brassicas, and this one is an absolute standout. It's known as spigariello. It's an Italian sprouting broccoli. I planted it in summer, so in January, and by about April, I was eating the leaves, just picking bunches of the tips right the way through the cooler months. Now that spring is coming, of course, the plant is stimulated to go to flower, and that means that you start to get these delicious little broccoli-type florets. Now, I pick a couple of handfuls of these every couple of days, which for me is really, really productive, still after months in the ground. Right next to it, same amount of area, I grew a crop of Romanesco. Now, they were delicious, beautiful, and of course, a beautiful big head, but they were really only a single meal from a large amount of garden space. When I look at the value of real estate in the garden, this one gives you a great reward, which means it gets a spot in the garden again next year. This is another cool season crop that I have fallen completely in love with, and I will grow again. It's known as mush, or in the old days, I used to know it as corn salad, and I grew it about 10 years ago, but it was from a little herb pot at the nursery with a couple of plants. I didn't think much of it. What I've learned now is that to enjoy it, and I enjoy this for months right through winter, you need to sow a nice big patch of seed. You can see it's these gorgeous, luscious leaves that you eat, and I cannot describe how delicious this leaf is. I know it's just a leaf, but it is superb. It's rich, velvety, and really nutty. And you can pick it right through the cooler months. It'll only germinate once that soil is cool in autumn. You sow the seed then, and you can pick it right through. Right now, it's starting to go up to flower, and then of course it will set seed. So now I have this plant in the garden, I can save that seed and grow it again next season. So my big tip here is, if you see something in your own garden, or of course someone else's, that you want to have a go at, get the seed now.
Bulbs are just beautiful, so here are some tips on growing them. Firstly, the soil. Bulbs are remarkably adaptable, and they'll grow in most types of soil as long as it's really well drained. If you haven't got well drained soil, grow them in a pot where you can control it by using good potting medium. Now, weeds. Now you need to manage weeds. First off, you need to get rid of weeds before you plant your bulbs, and then as the bulbs are growing, you have to continue to keep the weeds under control. The bulbs don't like the competition, and as the weeds grow, they'll actually block your flowers anyway. Now finally, what to do about daggy bulb foliage as the bulbs are dying down. A lot of people are tempted to cut all this foliage off, but it's really important that you don't do that. You need to let the stems and leaves die back naturally so that goodness goes back into the bulb and gives you flowers for next year. Some people go to the trouble of getting a bunch of foliage and knotting it so it looks neater. I'd actually tell you to ignore it, or grow your bulbs in containers, and then when they start to die down and look daggy, you simply pick the pot up and put it out of sight.
Many people will tend to trim off their fruiting buds when pruning their cherry tree. So how do you tell the difference between a leaf bud and a fruit bud? Well, these single buds along here, these are leaf buds, whereas these clusters here, these are fruit buds. So these you leave on. There is an exception to the rule though. This long bit of whippy growth here, with a fruiting bud at the end, this will form fruit, but it'll be inferior and the tree will work very hard to do that. So I take them off. But remember to leave these short ones on, because they'll produce your cherries, which will be pure gold.